So, you're interested in getting Euler. You fell for the sneeze, the thighs, the white numbers, and now you're here, wondering if your wallet and primos can handle it. Well, you're in luck, because this video is all about telling you what to expect from this lovely lady. From the strengths to the weaknesses, the benefits and caveats, I'll include as much as possible in this beginner's guide. Before I get into the meat of this video, let me quickly say what this video is not. It is not a video telling you whether to pull for or skip Euler's banner. They're your primogens and it's your money, so you do what you want with it. I'm not your dad, and I'm not here to tell you what to do. This is a beginner's guide for those who want to know more about how this character works. If you're wanting to know she'll help you beat the abyss, then she certainly can, since she did that for me. But that takes a lot of investment, and it's hardly easy these days, unless of course you just wail and get everything you want. This also means that it really isn't a video for players who are already very familiar with the game. Chances are if you're over AR50 and you've played the game for months, then you don't even need this guide. If you want more detailed information, then just go over to the keqingmains website and look there. If you haven't been there yet, trust me, it's worth it. They really know their stuff. I've just played a lot of Euler for months and know a thing or two for new players. If you want a quick summary of Euler from someone who's played her since her release, it's this. She's a highly conditional character. Her damage output can be fantastic, even outside of single target scenarios, but there's so many ways that things can go wrong with her. You miss your crit, or the enemy iframes your burst, or you don't have a way to build up your stacks. That's not even mentioning her energy and stat requirements. But to be fair, she does have multiple good free-to-play options for weapons, and plenty of her ideal teammates are 4-star characters. I wouldn't describe her as a character that's hard to build, but she's far less straightforward to play than most of the top-tier characters. If you learn how to play her, you can mitigate some of her issues and get a powerful character in return. So what is Euler about? She's currently the only dedicated physical DPS 5-star in the game, which is one of the reasons why she is so disliked as a unit. Physical damage in this game has no real reactions worth mentioning, which means you lose out on having the very powerful and amplifying reactions that Pyro, Hydro and Cryo have. While Euler can technically freeze and melt, she'll ruin freezes with her normal attacks and her melt damage is mediocre. Even so, Euler has some seriously high modifiers on her burst to compensate when you build your stacks up. After the initial cast, her burst has a 533.5% base damage modifier at talent level 6, and gets 109% more with every stack, which you can gain from your normal attacks and your skill. You can technically get a maximum of 30 stacks, but as a free-to-play Euler you won't get that, you're more likely to get around 14. Still, that's a total damage modifier of 2059.5%, and that's without considering your attack or other damage bonuses. However, there are some caveats to this. From the initial cast, you are locked on field for 7 seconds before the burst actually triggers, meaning that you have to choose your timing carefully or your burst will go to waste. What's more is that if your opponent has a shield, then that burst will be almost completely negated by it, so be mindful of them in your matchups and when you choose to use the burst. That's not even getting into the pain that is missing the crit on that burst. These caveats are why Euler is typically not considered to be very good, since there are so many variables to consider which limit the burst's effectiveness. Still, it doesn't change the fact that when it hits, it's really damn nice. There's also the factor of overall physical resistance, but Euler has so many ways of shredding resistance, from Superconduct to her own resistance shred from her skill, that it's rarely ever a problem for her. When it comes to shredding resistance, she only usually requires an off-field electro character like Fischl or Ryden to consistently keep resistance low. A very generalized Euler rotation for combat scenarios, once she's got all of her talents acquired, is this. You use her press E, or skill if you've rebounded, Q, her burst, and then either do 4 normal attacks, then hold E, then 4 more normal attacks, or alternatively you hold E, then 4 normals and a dash to cancel the animation, then 4 normals again. This is roughly the optimal way to get maximum stacks during those crucial 7 seconds, while also shredding resistance and doing decent on-field damage before the burst triggers. None of this really matters if you don't handle the energy issues. You can't keep using that burst over and over if you don't charge it up. This is where her team comps come into play, and why 2.3 is a slightly more favourable patch for her than her debut. In Genshin Impact 2.3, Ryden exists. While she's certainly not required to make Euler consistently burst, she certainly makes it easier, since Ryden's burst allows it to generate roughly a quarter of Euler's energy, or more if you have over 200% ER on Ryden. and her skill generates a lot of energy particles while also buffing burst damage. Then there's Fischl, who also generates a lot of energy and provides a significant off-field electro damage through Oz, who is a Giga Chip. Oz has virtually permanent uptime since Fischl's burst brings him back onto the field, so you will always have a source of off-field electro application and damage. She is easy to build, takes virtually no on-field time, and gets even better at her job with constellations. So if you don't have Ryden, then Fischl is a fantastic alternative. However, you will definitely want at least one cryo character for the powerful cryo resonance, which effectively gives you 15% extra crit rate. And there are two notable characters to mention, Diona and Rosaria. Diona is the ultimate support for any cryo character with an 80 cost burst, as her energy generation is phenomenal, and the utility of her shields and healing is very valuable. Since she'll be forced on field for 7 seconds with Euler, the shields really help her survivability and keep you focused on building stacks. Rosaria is a more offensive alternative, but her burst not only does solid off-field cryo damage, but it also buffs your crit rate while you're in this field. It's not always easy to stay in that field when enemies move around so much, but it's valuable nonetheless because you really don't want to miss your crit on Euler's burst. One of the main original team comps for Euler is to run her with Diona, Rosaria, and Fischl, primarily for superconduct, cryo resonance, and energy generation. With the introduction of Ryden in 2.1 there are alternatives. Another team of mostly 4-stars you can build is to replace Diona, or Rosaria, with Beidou, an immensely powerful off-field DPS character that helps to address Euler's more limited range and AoE. However, Beidou also has energy problems of her own, which is why either Ryden or Fischl is required with her. You might have heard of a certain incident regarding Ryden and Beidou's interactions, but with Euler as the trigger for Beidou's burst instead of Ryden, you overcome this issue. If you don't have Ryden or Fischl, you can also use Electro main character, though it becomes a little bit different. With Ryden, your options become less limited because energy isn't so much of a problem. You get a flexible slot where anyone can go, such as Bennett, Zhongli, Jean, or any other character that contributes without taking much field time. It's up to you whether you use Ryden with Euler, since the Ryden national team is significantly better for her, but she complements Euler very well. If you don't have her, you still have very good 4-star options. As for her weapons and artifacts, there are multiple good options even for a free-to-play account. Virtually all 5-star claymores perform well on her, assuming you're using an attack percent sans, with the standard banner weapon of Wolf's Greystone and Scar of Pride being good options for her, Wolf's Greystone arguably being the best option. So if you're lucky enough to have them, then you're good to go. Otherwise, the best 4-star options that are easy to get are Prototype Archaic, Snow-Tombed Star Silver, or the event weapon from 2.1 known as Luxurious Sea Lord. Of these, the Fish is the best one, because it's a guaranteed R5 weapon with a significant burst damage bonus. But since it's a limited event weapon, there's a good chance you don't have one. If that's the case, the latter two are craftable. Snow-Tombed Star Silver is actually given to you when you complete its questline, and highly recommended as weapons for you. If you purchase the Battle Pass, then the Serpent Spine becomes her best 4-star option, which it is for virtually every Claymore character in this game. You can use Blackcliff's Slasher and Lithic Blade if you have them, but it's hard to recommend the latter since most of Euler's preferred teammates are from either Mondstadt or Inazuma. Her most preferred artifact set is Pale Flame, since its passive aligns with her kit's design. But there are alternatives which are easier to farm for a freshly AR-45 player. If you have a 2-piece Pale Flame set but not a full 4-piece, you can use the 2-piece Bloodstained Chivalry set alongside it, since there's only an 18% attack lost from full Pale Flame, which isn't as much as you might think. You can either get Bloodstained Chivalry from strongboxes or from farming the Noblesse Oblige domain. Noblesse is a decent but inferior 2-piece bonus for Euler, and Noblesse is a very valuable artifact for other characters, including her supports. Alternatively, there's also the Gladiator's Finale and Shimenawa 2-piece bonuses, which are also decent options if you have good substats on those artifacts. When it comes to main stats, you're mostly looking for attack percent, physical damage percent, and crit rate on her Sands, Goblet, and Circlet respectively, since your ER issue should be solved by your supports, and her Ascension stat is crit damage, making rate more valuable for her in artifacts. If you're concerned about her energy recharge, then the baseline you'll want to aim for is around 150 to 160% ER. This can be lowered to around 140% with Rosaria and Diona, or with Ryden on your team. And if you use all three together, it's even lower. The last few things to mention before this video finishes are these. In terms of leveling your talents, the priority should roughly be burst, auto attacks, and skill. Most of her damage comes from her burst, but a significant amount comes from her normal attacks too, while barely any of it comes from her skill. The mini Lightfall Sword from her fully stacked hold E scales off her burst anyway, so talent levels in her skill are lowest priority, though hardly irrelevant given the resistant shred scaling. Additionally, since shield enemies like the Abyss Mages, Lectors, and Heralds require elemental reactions more than damage, you will need to consider your matchups carefully with Euler and consider bringing a character to address that. This is where the flexibility offered by Ryden is valuable, since you can bring characters for that purpose that would otherwise hurt your energy generation. That's about as much detail as I can provide without going overboard on this video's duration and purpose. If you're interested in knowing more, then I highly recommend going to the keqingmains website and looking through the information on Euler's page. Virtually any data and information you'd want to know about any character is there, and it's an extremely valuable resource for learning more about the game. I hope you found this video interesting, and if you're still interested in getting Euler, then I wish you the best of luck. Until then, see you later.